where we talk with the operators, the innovators, the investors who are shaping the future of aging services. On today's episode, we're diving into the heart of AgeTech ecosystem with a man who's actively building it. My guest today is Jeff Gray. He's the founder of AgeTech Connect, which is a thriving community of innovators that are seriously dedicated to redefining the aging experience through technology. We'll discuss how his community has just grown into an invaluable hub for founders and investors alike. And we'll get an exclusive preview of their upcoming summit, as well as some of his unique insights into what it takes to succeed in this space. Jeff, welcome to Tech Smarter. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Hey, thanks for having me on your show. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, Jeff, for anyone who is not familiar with you, could you please introduce yourself and how you landed here today with AgeTech Connect?
Sure. So my name is Jeff Gray and the founder and CEO of AgeTech Connect, formerly AgeTech Atlanta. I got into the AgeTech space, like a lot of us, through personal events. I was a tech guy from the earliest stages when I got out of college and started building my own career. But when my mom was diagnosed with Alzheimer's and my family went through all of the things that we experienced with the healthcare system and all the supports that we wish we had, it opened my eyes to this huge domain that we now call age tech, right? Which is technology that could improve aging in any way, shape, or form. So that's how I got to here. And, we started this AgeTech Connect enterprise just as a casual every other month networking group here in Atlanta. Turned out that Atlanta was a significant hub for innovation, and we've grown from there to have 13 innovation hubs led by an incredible group of volunteer leaders across the U.S. and Canada today.
I love that. So it's not just in the U.S., it's also in Canada. And I also love the fact that you started where you're planted, right? And it may not have been what maybe some people would think would be the place to get started, Atlanta, with age tech, but you started where you are planted. And do you think that it helped significantly that you had roots there and connections within the community?
I do. Atlanta's a really interesting town. It's a great place. It's a small big town or a big small town, whichever way you want to phrase it. But it is a close-knit community. There's, people's doors are open and they want to talk and learn about what you're doing. I think there was some serendipity to it. We started reaching out and looking at what was going on. And it turned out that Atlanta, without the individual players knowing it, because everybody was kind of advancing their own agenda, really was a beachhead for innovation in aging and in age tech and age-related technologies and tech-enabled services. So that little bit of good luck helped us for sure. But yeah, Atlanta is a place where it's easy to meet people and folks want to learn what you're doing, and then they want to learn how they can help. So it really was the right spot.
I'm so glad about that. When we think about the age tech landscape, sometimes it can feel fragmented with innovators working on their own, working in silos. And what inspired you to build out the community to connect these different parts of the ecosystem?
Well, truthfully, I really, it was driven by a sense of passion that, active, healthy aging is not, it's not the norm in our society. Aging in a way that's full of dignity, independence, health, and vitality, that's not the norm. And I really I was passionate about changing that. And I felt that the way to do it was to help the innovators, right? So I could have approached that problem in a lot of different ways, but as a technology person, I'm like, I feel that technology can change the game. So the drive and the passion of it came from believing in the power of technology to transform this landscape. And we've put all of our chips behind that. That's what we want to do, is to support the innovator, the trailblazer that's trying to change things. And that could be a startup entrepreneur, it could be a researcher, could be an educator, could be an entrepreneurial venture, or an innovation center inside of a corporate entity. So we look expansively at who an innovator is. It's not just a startup founder, but that's the way we've approached it.
That is such a unique approach, but I've also found, as my experience as being in it as a fourth generation entrepreneur, as well as a solopreneur, that there are times when you join forces with a larger organization where you're able to really bring the most powerful solutions to fruition. I found that when I connected with the Smarter service and the way that we've been able to scale based on their infrastructure and their collective movement. And I've also seen how AgeTech Connect, which was AgeTech Atlanta, has seen so much growth. It's crazy over the past year, and truly becoming the go-to resource for so many founders. When you think about the strategy for building and scaling such a vibrant and engaged community, what comes to mind?
Are you asking like what drove it forward, or what's the question there? Is that sort of like,
well, let's talk about, earlier when we were just chatting in the green room before we started the broadcast, you talked about AgeTech Las Vegas. How does something like that start in your ecosystem?
Yes. Okay. So let me tell you what happened. So I think here's the pathway for growth for us. So we spent a couple of years meeting every other month here in Atlanta. And one of the things we did consistently was we shared the fruits of our labors on social media, primarily LinkedIn, every time. So every other month we'd have three innovators come into our venue, wherever we were hosting, talk about the problems they were working on, get feedback from the audience, help people, do all those networking things. We take great photography, we do great summaries, and then we would share those results. Something as simple as that. And the repetition, the continuity there, right? The reliability, and the fact that we were always showing up with more content. And then, we were also doing exciting things like producing pitch competitions for the American Society on Aging, getting out there in the world. But that cadence, that commitment to meeting regularly, putting founders on the stage regularly, sharing it with the world, gained worldwide notoriety that really surprised us. And it turned out that there is a tremendous desire for people to get together in person locally. And I think this is what we really tapped into, is that people want to come together locally and have peer-to-peer networking, find access potentially to buyers, to investors, but on a local level. And candidly, it really surprised me how strong that desire was. So what happened is, about a year and a half ago, we had several great people who had come to us and said, "Hey, we'd like to start." The first one was Cambria Jacobs out of Colorado. Said, "Hey, can we talk about," right? And then LA, Chicago, New York, and we met the right people, and we came up with a playbook based on this underlying premise that people wanted to get together in person, that they wanted to convene. And it was a nerve that we didn't realize was as hot as it was. And it just drove it forward. And when you look at, we just opened Nashville this time last week.
Okay.
And, the very first AgeTech Connect Nashville meetup was Blockbuster. And because we've built this momentum and people want to be a part of this movement hyper locally in their own community. So, we had Neil Patel, who's the chief information officer for the Vanderbilt University Medical System, Andy Flatt, who's the CIO for National Healthcare Corporation, and Brad Turner, who is the commissioner of the Tennessee Department on Disability and Aging, all at the flagship meetup with a full room. And, whereas when we started out, we were lucky to have 20 people in a room. Okay. So that's not bragging on our success, but it just reveals how much desire there is for people to convene around this topic and to share knowledge and learn and connect and grow and, really support one another, around themes related to better, healthier, more active aging.
Absolutely. So it's really a combination.
That was a long answer. I'm sorry about that.
I'll cut you off next time. It's really a combination of doing some marketing around the event and showing people what's out there and who's connecting, what you learn, as well as creating a space where people can share ideas and feel valued, and it's in a safe space, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think one of the biggest pieces of the puzzle is the peer-to-peer relationships. We have 4 pillars, right? So we want to support innovators by giving them access to content, capital, community, and customers, right?
Yep.
And we don't have magic bullets for those, but those are the things that people need, right? So, and depending on where you are in your journey, you may need those things at different levels, right? So if you just closed your Series A, you're not hunting for capital, but you're keen for customers and so on and so forth. But where you find there's so much support and help to be found is when you're able to have peer-to-peer relationships and talk to another founder who's at your same point in the journey, maybe maybe even in an almost competitive space where you can say, hey, I'm having these issues, and learning how other people are dealing with challenges, headwinds, opportunities that are before them.
So valuable, and exactly what the entrepreneur needs frequently. They need to be around other people who are also solving a similar problem, not in a competitive space, but in a collaborative space. I can see that 100%. I want to talk about your upcoming inaugural summit that's coming up in November.
Yeah.
And you've promised it will be different from the typical conference, which I love. What sets the summit apart, and what can attendees expect to gain from the experience?
Well, this is our inaugural event. So we're excited about it. By the way, I'm at the Atlanta Tech Village right now in Atlanta, which is where our headquarters is. And we're going to do the whole event will take place here. And we're kind of doing a takeover of the Atlanta Tech Village. The theme of the summit is the future of work, customers, and community in a longevity economy. And what we're working hard to do is to enlarge the tent a bit and expand the conversations to the extent that we can a little bit beyond some of the primary domains of the space, right? So we see a lot of emphasis on senior living and senior care and long-term care. That's great, and those are all valuable, but we're trying to open up the tent a little bit. I'll give you an example. I was just on the phone with some of our panelists from one of our conversation tracks is going to be around aging plus money, right? How do we plan for, protect, and provision the resources we need to age well? And so we have the financial gerontologist, Alexis Abramson from Wells Fargo, that's going to moderate that panel. Brian St. John with Pindrop, and Pindrop is the world leader in fraud and scam detection and prevention. They have enormous numbers of financial services companies and banks as their clients. Elizabeth Clubb with MyFlock, and another special guest to be announced shortly, and unpacking what we need to do to be better planners, better protectors, and thinking about how we provision as we need to start access care. So aging well is going to require some financial resources. So we need to plan for them. We need not to lose them to fraud, and we need to provision them as we go. So that's just an example of a way we're kind of trying to dig in a little bit deeper and unpack topics that might not be the most commonly discussed in some forums. I'm not being critical of any other events. I just think we're trying to try to break that out. We're going to have an incredible track on artificial intelligence that'll look at it from a wide variety of perspectives, from HR, senior care, healthcare, all these different perspectives on how AI is changing the game in our space right now.
Wonderful. It sounds like it's developing so that there's a lot of collaboration and not just consumption of content, but true collaboration and solutions that are going to be discussed.
Yep.
Yeah, great.
We're all excited. One of our speakers will be Dr. Deb Oury,
okay.
Who was the former chief medical officer for the CDC, recently departed. She has a illustrious career and thoroughly understands the public health aspects of aging as well. So we're excited to have her as a speaker as well. We've got a really diverse group. I think it's going to be really fun.
Excellent. I can't wait. I'm looking forward to that. I recently received an email from you, and I think I wrote you back at first. I was like, did you mean to send this to me? Because it's your Sunday night insight email. And it's written in such a way that it's sort of like a family letter,
Yeah.
and I love that. And I do read through it. And I saw that you had talked about this concept of there's this one myth and 5 immutable truths that every founder needs to know. So I want to ask you today, what is that one myth about succeeding in age tech that you believe needs to be debunked?
Well, far and away, it's what I kind of call the 65 plus myth. And,
okay.
I think if you're an age tech founder, it's fine to put these sort of macro numbers in your deck because some of your investors might not be totally familiar with the space. But when it comes to building a business in the age tech space, 65 plus just doesn't mean anything, right? As a great example, my dad, was still wrapping up his career running marathons when he was, 64, 65. He's 88 today, still living a vibrant life, but he's gone through a lot of life challenges. He had a tragic situation that led to him losing his leg. He's in assisted living. So my dad has changed where he lives and how he navigates the world. He's tremendously astute. He has incredible buying power. I'm 63, and we don't look anything like one another in terms of what our likes, needs, desires, dreams, aspirations are. And I just feel that strongly that all evidence is that if you have a 65 plus thesis, and if you're painting that picture of addressing that marketplace, it's just not foundational to a successful business plan. And I just try to convince founders, especially first time founders, to divorce them of this 65 plus notion. And what we see is that if you want to address certain areas of the aging experience, you're probably going to start with a much smaller cohort, defined more around psychographics, right, than age and demographics. And that those beachheads that you'll find will enable you to establish some credibility, get those early stage customers, and then scale from there. So just the 65 plus is just not a meaningful thing. By the way, I think it's still the case if you're building audiences for campaigns that run in Facebook, your ability to segment your market from 13 to 65, you can parse your demographics in age by year. So, and then you hit 65 and everything from there is 65 plus, which is crazy.
Yes, it is. It's crazy. It sounds like there's a definite need to break that out even more, especially as the aging population increases astronomically, right? I want to also talk about the 5 immutable truths. Can you share what you found to be some of the most essential truths for age tech innovators and founders?
I think the first one is, you see this, right? We attract as a sector, we attract a lot of diversity in founders, right? We have lots of underrepresented founders, women and people of color that approach this industry and are very successful, I might add. But these overwhelmingly, I would call theirs are story-led ventures. And that just means that you, as the founder, have been moved into this space through life experiences, right? Losing a loved one to Alzheimer's, as I did. Pardon me. So the number one immutable truth is that your story is not your business. Your story is not your revenue model. And where I hear a founder say something once in a while where I know that founder's they're going to face some real challenges, is where they'll tell me, I just built what I needed. And it's never true. It's just not. It's not true. So your lived experience should be your passion, your drive, and should fuel you and help you get through those rough spots where you go back in your head and you double down and focus and get through the challenges. But your life experience is just not your business plan. And that's, I think, where I see the greatest majority of first-time founders stumbling, is they've spent so much time building around their own idea of what the problem is versus getting out there and understanding how they can solve a huge problem for somebody else and who might pay for it.
Yes, so it's sort of like you have fallen in love with your experience more so than the person that your product is designed to help.
Yeah, I'll give you an example. In 4 years, I've probably seen couple dozen maybe, mobile apps that have been designed, and they're basically, these apps are what I would call a care circle app, right?
Yep.
So I'm a caregiver, and I got this application that I can download and install, and I'm gonna create a profile for my dad who's in senior living or at home, having home care needs. I'm gonna add my brother and my sister and my neighbor, and I'm gonna use this app to coordinate this care circle, and this is all gonna be great. Well, we don't really see success there. And I'll tell you something, when I went through this tragedy 2 years ago with my dad, who found himself, 1 week living independently on his own, and 2 weeks later fighting for his life with sepsis in the hospital. And then what ensued was about a 6-month odyssey to help him navigate all of those crises and survive the ordeal and reemerge out the other end with a chance to rebuild his life, his health. With all my experience and knowing all these great founders and all these great products, I didn't download any app to help my family manage that. I used the world's greatest care coordination application ever invented, and that is a group chat on my phone. And it never let us down. And it would have made no sense for me to download some other tool and log in and create an account. And I'm not throwing any shade on people who are trying to address the care coordination problem. It's a real problem. But isn't it interesting that you would think that I would have leapt to a tool that I knew of, like, oh, I'm in this situation and I know exactly what we need. And in fact, nothing Nothing worked better than a group chat. Quite frankly, by the way, I mean, a smartphone is a godsend for these situations, right?
It is. And I've heard so often, even though you could be in the age tech space, you could be in a senior living, as a senior living employee, but when this happens to you, you don't often think about the resources and your experience and your knowledge that, and how you can apply that to helping you in that moment. So I think there's so much that happens emotionally that we go to the easiest and the easiest method possible. However, I can see that on an ongoing basis, as we might be experiencing right now in my own family with our parents, having a caregiver app at that point, as time goes on, can be the most helpful thing possible.
It might be, we say, across all domains of technology, that in the startup space in general, doesn't have to do with aging. We always say, and it's good advice, can you solve a problem? Can you create something that's 10 times better than status quo? Is it 10 times better, right? And I think that's where the challenge is, to get people to spend money and time to invest that in a solution. It's got to be way better. So a little bit better doesn't really move the needle, and that's just a fact of life for any entrepreneur anywhere. We need to be successful. You develop products and or tech-enabled services that feel indispensable once somebody knows about them.
Yeah,
can't live without it, right? And
right.
That's where you've got to get.
That's right. Can't live without it. So do you have any advice for a founder who's trying to get a meeting with an investor in this space?
Well, I would say this. I don't really think that's the problem. Okay, so whether it's this, there are so many ways to meet investors. From being involved in AgeTech Connect events, or maybe you break in and become a participant in AARP's AgeTech Collaborative. You join an incubator or an accelerator. I think the real issue is, how prepared are you to have a conversation with an investor? And I think that's the real issue. Is when I see founders that are struggling, it's actually not because they can't meet another investor. Is that they do meet investors, and those investors are not interested in writing checks. And it's a very, look, some founders are better at presenting their ideas than others. Of course, there's the fact some people just have charisma, right? People just have that, that God-given gift. But generally speaking, when it comes to gaining traction with investors, it's usually that your business is not in the right place to attract investment.
Got it. It's something for me to definitely mull over, especially as we're going to be interviewing more investors on the podcast. So definitely something to think about. And is that something that is also discussed at your summits and your meetups?
It is, and it's a good look. We are our team, so myself and then other our CEOs across the country, Gordon, our co-founder. We're very accessible people. You can ping us on LinkedIn and we're going to reply. So there's open channels for startup founders that are looking to raise capital. And by the way, I mean, let me just tie these two things together. Your story is not your business. Have you created something that's 10 times better than the other thing, than the status quo? Have you figured out who's going to pay for it, right? Who's going to buy it? And does that make sense? And do you have some validation on that? And when you start to knock down those, you'd be surprised how investor interest escalates, because investing is risky, and so people want to invest in things that seem like they're disruptive to the space, and where you've got a good idea about who could pay, right? So it's got to be better, and somebody has to pay for it, and that's life, right? We can't change that.
When you're looking ahead to the development and the growth of AgeTech Connect and the wider AgeTech industry, what are you most excited to see come to fruition at this point?
For our organization, for AgeTech Connect?
Yes.
Yep. I mean, for this year ahead, this next 12 months, a couple of things. We had a really successful year. We will wrap up the year having done 5 senior living and post-acute care innovation workshops and summits across the country. We'll have produced the Prudential Peak AgeTech Challenge is coming up next week in Louisville. So that pitch competition, the summit at the end of the year. So we're excited to see all of those things grow in scope and engagement. So that's just really exciting for us. And this year, really, for me, is about increasing the level of engagement at all of the meetups at all of our communities, and really watch. This is kind of our year to see all of those communities really start to thrive and take off. And it's just a very, very exciting year.
Yeah.
When Mahima, who launched Nashville for us, said, tell me what are our KPIs? Like, how will I know I'm succeeding?
Yeah.
I said, get through a year and have 4 or 5 in-person meetups with 3 to 4 speakers at each one. Photograph and catalog the results of that and share it with the world. That's your KPI for this next 12 months run right from here to a year from today. That's an enormous. That's what we will accomplish from that activity is mind-boggling, right? We will engage that Nashville community at a level they've never been engaged before. We'll grow our aggregate knowledge of the space. So all the growth in activity at the local level is what's got me most excited about the year ahead.
Exciting. Well, Jeff, thank you so much for being here and the incredible work that you're doing to build this community. How can people get in touch with you?
So personally, I am easy to reach. So I'm in LinkedIn. All of my information is fully transparent. So my email, jeff@agtechatlanta.com. My phone number, my DMs are wide open. You can go to our website and join the community. But that's the easiest way. And Gordon Rogers is equally accessible. We're really here to help. If there's a founder out there that's got questions, that wants to make connections, they can reach out to us. We'll help you connect locally if you're in one of our innovation hub regions. But yeah, we're easy folks to get a hold of.
Yes, you are. And if anyone has a comment or a topic idea for Tech Smarter, feel free to reach out to me also on LinkedIn. But for anyone who's watching this as a founder, as an entrepreneur, I want you to leave with this one idea. There's no need for you to be doing this on your own. There are communities like AgeTech Connect that want to support your mission, want to see you succeed. So if you learned anything out of this today, is that you don't need to be doing this all alone. And your community is out there and ready for you to get connected. And with that, I just want to thank you all for being with us today. And we will see you right back here next week. Bye.